So let's begin. Jim, I'm sure, will be here shortly. And hi everyone from the public. It's nice to see everyone today. So we'll start the meeting now. I'm going to open it up to public comment, and remember that your comments must address something that's under the purview of the Social Equity Committee. And you'll have 3 minutes. And does anyone have anything they'd like to say from the public? No? No one? Oh. Sabina, I see your hand.
Let me make sure, Sabine, can you hold on just a second? I just want to make sure that Tracy over there that's hosting can hear you and make sure that she's accounting for you. I think you're unmuted though, so you can go ahead and talk, Sabine. Sorry about that. I just want to make sure we are recognizing you appropriately. Go ahead. Councilmember Seth, if you want to let him, or excuse me, let her talk. I just wanted to make sure Tracy was recording it accurately. I don't know if she can hear me over at the chambers.
Oh, okay. Sabina, you're up. Are you there? We can't. You're not muted, are you? No. There. Oh, you took your hand down. You don't want to talk? Okay. Anyone else? Oh, there you are. Sabina. You're a moving target.
How about that? Can you all
there
hear
you
me?
Are. Yes, there you are.
Into a different microphone that I have. So there have been some discussion in the group, in this committee, from people calling in to elected officials in Sonora government that have this perverse belief that racism isn't in Sonora, or that it's not a problem in Sonora. But I want to point out something that happened on the just last weekend on Saturday during the most recent far-right anti-vax rally. The unlicensed security for the event brought in fascists from the Proud Boy and California Valley Patriots into the area, Freedom Angels, among other far-right groups that have a history of violence and regularly advocate for it. Further, attendees of the rally were shouting racist rhetoric such as the Chinese are coming and they're going to eat us all or eat you all. This is a continuation. This is the third event in a series of far-right anti-vax rallies that have escalated towards violence and racism. During one, I was called an N-word lover for having a Black Lives Matter mask. So to suggest that racism doesn't exist in Sonora is absurd, especially when we have the state of Jefferson importing fascists from out of town to come to rallies and provide unlicensed security for these events. And I'm sure this can be confirmed by those on the committee that were actually at the event and possibly spoke at the event in the capacity as a candidate for future office. So yeah, it's just kind of disturbing that someone on the Social Equity Committee spoke at a rally where racism and far-right advocates for violence, and it's just odd. I don't know why someone on this committee would be speaking at a far-right rally like this, but that's just my 2 cents. I'm done.
Thank you, Sabina. Anyone else wish to speak from the public? Pat. Pat?
Yeah, I just want to ask, all the committee members, can we see their faces? It looks like Darren is got his video off. And I guess we can't see Mary Rose. Or anyway, it's just nice to be able to see when you're, attending a meeting by Zoom, to see the faces. That's
My video is not working. I was trying to get it working earlier. Apologize.
Yeah, I'll say I had a lot of trouble getting on. I don't know if anybody else did today. Never had trouble before, but anyway, okay.
Tristan.
Mainly what I want to say is I don't have an image, and I never do, and I'm never going to. And that's irrelevant. I'm back again, and I will be talking more.
All right. That looks like that's it. Oh, I'm sorry, Dawn. Hi, welcome.
Hi, sorry I'm late. I did have trouble kind of getting on and getting connected today. I just wanted to pop in and let people know that we are doing a project. Building Bridges is doing a project. We have a community organization, and we're doing a version of a human library. So I'd really like to invite people to check us out. We have a site on Facebook. And on the second Wednesday of the month in the afternoon at 4, we're going to have, and on the last Saturday of the month, starting in October, we invite people to come and have one-on-one conversations, get to know somebody that you otherwise wouldn't know. We're hoping to move the county beyond tolerance and replace stereotypes with real human beings and human connections. So anyway, I hope you'll check us out. We have a Facebook page, and we'll be posting more information there. Thank you.
Nice. Thanks, Dawn. Pat and Tristan, you still have your hands up, but I assume it's because you've forgotten to take them down. Because I will open to public comment later in the meeting. Someone with the phone number that ends in 5354.
Yeah. Not sure which anti-vax rally Sabina claims to have been at. I didn't hear anything like that. Granted, I wasn't square in the middle of things. Also didn't see that person there. But a lot of things can be said about Antifa as well, and the violence and the riots. So the hypocrisy level is a little much. I could give a nice long list. I could fill 3 minutes with that really easy. If the name Khalil comes to mind for anybody, that was a Sonora police officer. Nope, he wasn't white. Neither is Officer Ma. By the way, Ron Wano, I'm not absolutely sure, but I think he was full-blooded Miwok. Maybe he was Mexican or something. I never asked because it really never mattered to me. But he was chief of police back in the day. So I'm not going to say that there's no racist. Nobody says any stupid stuff. I've certainly heard it from both sides. But
Both sides. Okay.
Somebody's a pretty good little propagandist. It's really getting old. While I'm at it, George Floyd had enough fentanyl to kill him at least 3 times over, if not 5. And I would take that position for 10 or 15 minutes to prove that won't kill you. He might have lived longer because he was face down. He said I couldn't breathe multiple times while he was still standing up. I heard somebody mention foaming at the mouth. That happens when there's fentanyl overdose. Of course, the media is not going to tell you that, just like you heard that a Border Patrol agent was whipping people, and actually that's just reins, and it's just to keep people back from the horse. So nobody gets trampled, the horse doesn't go down, nobody gets crushed. I don't know, man. Wasn't quite what I intended to say tonight, but I think I'll just go ahead and quit for now.
Anyone else from the public wish to speak? Megan Mills. Hi.
Hi, thank you. Let me put my hand down so I don't forget. That last comment is a perfect illustration of why this committee is needed and how offensive and ugly to bring up Mr. Floyd, who was murdered in cold blood. I mean, that is a perfect illustration of the kind of, speaking of propaganda that happens in this community around denial and white supremacy. That right there that is the crux of the issue, is that people will go to any length to believe that it doesn't exist and defend their right to just be racist. So that I'm very offended by that remark. I think it is ugly and not necessary. And I'm really glad that the work of the Social Equity Committee is continuing.
And this is just Mary Rose. Hey, Tracy, can you remember to silence anybody that has previously made a public comment? Thank you, Tracy.
Okay, is that it? So we're, as you all know, we're working on the resolution. And Mercedes put the whereas statements that we've approved so far in a, all on one sheet in sort of resolution form, so we can kind of just get a sense of where we're going and what we've written and everything that's, it's not in the order necessarily that it will be in. And it's not nor is it necessarily the final wording, but it was just, I thought, very helpful. And thank you, Mercedes, for doing that, because we can kind of see what we're building here in a way that we can't with my little table. So I hope you all had a chance to just kind of review that and just familiarize yourself with it. Also on the table, we really, it appears that we've reached almost to number 5, but we spent quite a bit of time on this page 5, not number 5, but page 5. And it's whereas 4A, whereas the city of Sonora condemns any form of racially motivated hate, intolerance, and white supremacy culture. And there was quite a bit of conversation last meeting about the term white supremacy culture. And out of that conversation, Mercedes and Elisa offered to provide some videos, some YouTube videos that they were familiar with. And I hope that you all received those. Number 1 and number 2, had a chance to review them. Mary Rose sent that out late Friday. And so I would sort of like this conversation today to start with those videos and to see what people thought about them, what they learned from them, and if there's a way, if you have a sense of a better way to word the document that we spent most of last meeting on. So,
Councilmember Such, if I may, we did not agendize discussion on the videos. So
I'm sorry to say, Mary Rose, that this discussion is not about the videos. It is about white supremacy culture, which we are talking about in the resolution. So it is not about the videos. It is about the concept.
I understand that. However, those videos were not made available to the public. So if Councilmember Such is asking a formal discussion on the videos, that would not fall in line with discussion as per Brown Act agenda requirements. You could talk about it in regards to somebody, I guess, saying in regards to how they would like to add or maybe look at the resolution, but Just looking at the discussion of the videos on its own would not be allowable, permissible under the Brown Act because it was not agendized.
You know, I have to say that I am getting a little frustrated with the way that the city administration is using the Brown Act as convenient, instead facilitating the intention of the Brown Act, which is transparency. Is like creating obstacles to have conversations that are obviously the subject of this committee. So we provide information in advance, and we don't know why it is not possible to use the concepts.
But Mercedes, I'm only giving a recommendation. If the council so chooses to talk, that's at their discretion.
We're pretty smart people. I agree with you, Mercedes. I think we can correlate these videos into our talk without saying what's in the video.
Or just, we can, actually, I think we could reference a video like we would reference a novel or a book that we're reading. We could do it like that, not a formal conversation directly about the videos, but just, reference them as you know, we have referenced other things that we've read that we haven't specifically agendized. So I'm sorry I started it out like that, but anyhow, so white supremacy culture. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to start out with? If not, you know, I mean, I have a couple thoughts, but I would certainly open it up to you guys first. Well, I guess I'll just start. What I would, just in thinking about this topic and the discomfort that surrounds it and that we have come up against, I think perhaps we need two whereas statements to deal with white supremacy culture. One defines it, and the other one is like an action item around it. For instance, and this is very rough, but in the definition, I think it should be what white supremacy culture means and what it does not mean, because it's, as we know, it's a trigger for many people. And it's not about, we're not talking about the Ku Klux Klan. We're not talking about overt racism. We're talking about systemic racism. And and then in the second whereas that we make a commitment as to speak out, to pay attention to white supremacy culture in all of its manifestations and where it shows up in all of our lives, that and those of us who are not Black or Indigenous or people of color don't notice it. We need to make a pledge that we will pay attention to it in a different way. And also to use our privilege as white people, or as all of us, to use our privilege to bring the disparities to the attention when we see them. I mean, it's really a pledge for all of us to stand up against what we who walk through this life as white people often don't see. And then committing to checking our biases as they show, and then finally talking about how we heal these affronts when they arise. So that was just sort of, I was watching a video once, and those are it's sort of what I took from that. So any thoughts? Come on, you guys, come on.
I'll chime in. I first just wanted to apologize for missing our last meeting. Some things come up with my family that I needed to attend to. I did watch the video of the meeting last time, and Colette, I think if you could mute, I can hear myself through your,
Sorry.
I can hear myself through your speaker. That's okay. So I did catch up on the meeting last week. And I have to say, someone mentioned this last meeting, but I thought the conversation surrounding white supremacy culture was good. It's a triggering conversation for people for many different reasons. And I think someone mentioned this, it seemed like it was done in a productive and kind and thoughtful way. And I think that if we continue it in that direction, we can really start to build some bridges. In a video that I recently watched, there was a story about a grocery store, and a white woman wrote a check and paid for her groceries and went on. And then a Black woman wrote a check and was asked to provide multiple pieces of ID. And then the grocer checked a bad checkbook and questioned her much more than she did the white woman. And the white woman came to, I can still hear myself. I don't know what's going on, but it might be the Sonora City Councils, or I don't know, but I can still hear myself. And then the white woman came to the grocer and came to her defense and pointed out how she was mistreating the Black woman. And the thing that I liked about that message is how it explained privilege, because I know for a lot of people, privilege, white privilege is a triggering word. And I want us to get to a space where we can talk about that without it being a triggering word. And that particular video showed how you can come to another person's defense or use your privilege to help people of color, or to kind of help right some of those wrongs. And I think that no matter who is watching that, regardless of race, regardless of background, regardless of experience, there's a sense of humanity that it exhibited that I think is relatable no matter what your experience is, because I think every single person that's here today, if they were in that situation, we help each other, right? There's that humanity. And if you were in that situation, I think you would extend that olive branch and come to the defense of someone else. And so I just appreciated that, I guess, perspective, because it showed privilege in a different way and something that I thought was just very human. There's, I think, more to talk about and unpack with white supremacy culture. I think it's worth it. I think it's worth a conversation, and I have some more notes about last meeting that I can share later, but that's one takeaway that was powerful to me. And so thank you.
You're muted, Colette.
I got it. Darren, I'll call on you in just a second. I just want to say that Elisa's computer is down. She is watching this on her phone, but she cannot speak. So I will periodically be her voice if I'm able. She's having computer trouble.
I think it's all a Zoom. I'm still having a problem. I can't get the video to show for some reason.
So Darren.
So touching on what Nikki said, she's absolutely right. In a situation that something like that took place, I find myself paying for someone's groceries if they were declined, or taking care of a bill. I've done it many times. So the thing that I think is the healing, the bridging the gap, and getting all of us on the same page and being together as a community is most important. The thing I do want to point out is individuality still does have to precedent somewhere in there. As if I've written, and I'm not saying this, if I've written a lot of hot checks and, then there's some question on it, or that was my son at the cash register that took I don't have any, but it took my check and knows me better. And there's usually a stipulation where everybody gets ID for alcohol, that same kind of thing. So I think you're 100% correct, Nikki, on the outcome of that situation for unknown variables, but we can't take the individual out of every single scenario and say, because of this scenario, this is how I viewed it, because we just don't know. It's a very broad stroke there, instead of knowing all the ins and outs. If it was portrayed as it normally was, just like that, yeah, wrong as shit. You can't do that. That's not fair. Now, again, if you have those variables like, Nikki, you were checking me out, you know me, you don't need to check my ID out for alcohol. The kid behind me who doesn't have a brain, his beard, you might check him. Doesn't matter, but it's still the same kind of concept to me. Now, again, going back to what was portrayed there, it would be wrong. But individuality.
Mercedes.
Dude, still, it's broken.
Mercedes.
She's trying.
She's
Something's up
trying
with
to
the computer.
unmute.
It's Zoom.
What's going on here?
Mercedes, it's showing that you're unmuted now. Try to say something. Now press it again.
Muted, now unmuted. There you go.
There.
There you go.
Okay, now it's gone. Okay, yeah, what I want to say is that in that particular scenario that Nikki shared with us, it is a very specific scenario. But the interesting thing about that scenario is that the women that passed first in front of the checker was a Black woman that looked white. I don't know if some of you have known the concept of passing white. People that have lighter skin, it doesn't matter the ethnicity, could be Mexicans, could be Hawaiians, could be Asians, could be any ethnicity, but it's a passing white because it look or speak in a different way. So in that scenario, what is showing is that the treatment is different depending on the lack of awareness of the checker. So the checker treat the white passing person in a different way than the Black person. Now, I also want to say that social locations allowed each of us and all of us to have different ways to be allies in different scenarios. It's not like, you know, one or the other. I, as a Mexican person, a Mexican origin person, American citizen with an accent, might have a different, I don't have the same privilege than a person whose first language is English. But if I am, let's say, in an environment where I am the person with higher education, my location, my social location allows me to be an advocate for others. So I think that one of the most important points for me in those scenarios about white supremacy culture is that if we are not aware of what is culture and what are we talking about when we say white supremacy culture, we can misunderstand or we can miss the possibility to be an ally to someone. Like, let's say, for example, that there is a public meeting in downtown and somebody is talking in a racist way about Asians or Mexicans or disabled people. and I am not aware of that is part of the white supremacy culture, probably I would not be an ally for anyone, because I would go along with those characteristics of the white supremacy culture. So to conclude, I think that the reason for us to be aware of the characteristics of the white supremacy culture is because it can allow us to support each other, to build bridges in the community, to really stand for each other. But if we are not aware, then how can we be allies?
You're muted again.
Just muting. Mercedes, I mean, I think it's our duty. It's our job now to be aware, to not make an assumption that what we saw was just, was nothing. It's, and I think that the two women in the grocery store, as you and Nikki pointed out, are a perfect example. And we who get to pass through that door more easily have a responsibility to the person behind us who gets stopped. And it's ongoing. I mean, we have to pay attention to this all the time and not just do the fallback to the assumption that it wasn't white supremacy culture. We can't fall back to that any longer because it's not. I mean, it is white supremacy culture, excuse me. I just have a few things that Elisa wrote that and she wrote this first one after Nikki spoke. And she said, I agree, any change is uncomfortable. It must have been uncomfortable for those to vote Black going to white school, Blacks drinking out of white fountains. We have to remember what brought us to the table for this committee, injustice to Blacks and people of color. I say we say it. And then she wrote, white supremacy culture, I vote we make those uncomfortable. No change happens without being uncomfortable. So any thoughts there? Darren, you figured out your video.
Still messed up, but yeah, I'm on there.
Okay.
If I could, something just kind of came to mind. I know this word and this term has been our roadblock, right? And it's the roadblock in our society for people to talk about this, but I know we can do it. And I think one thing that we all agree on is that we want to ensure that we rewrite the wrongs of history, right? That we don't make those same mistakes again. I think Darren, in one of your, what did you write? In one of your statements, history has shown a lack of morals and values, right? So that history of a lack of morals and values, what was that caused by? I mean, if we want to right those wrongs, we have to use that word. I don't know if you want to answer that, Darren, but what morals and values are we referring to?
Some of those, when I looked into the history, more along the lines of execution without trial, with some of the stuff of this being a gold rush town and some of the things that have happened in its past that none of us are responsible for. Our grandparents are probably not responsible for, but it was morally unjust. And some people probably paid the ultimate price for that without having the rights, having the afforded stuff that we have today. That's some of the moral stuff. Moral is a giant word that I'm going to steal Tristan's here, ideology. My moral right is different from your moral right, which is different from everyone's moral right. It's not an actual guideline. So when I say the moral rights, it's more far past versus present. 1800s obviously really bad around here. 1900s still bad. As we come through more and more, we get better. So using that term to me, and I've been taking notes. What Colette said about systemic racism. Okay, why couldn't we
just stay on this point just real quick, Darren? If we can just stay on this one point, because I feel like maybe we can get somewhere. That one statement that you wrote, that history has shown a lack of morals and values. We all agree with that. Those actions that lacked morals and values, who committed those acts?
Many different people, many different avenues, Chinese camp, brought over for slavery. That's not right. Chinese killing Chinese because of gold, not right. Whites killing whites, whites killing blacks, whites killing indigenous. All that stuff is encompassed. But I don't want the terminology for white supremacy to be another immoral thing we say. Systemic racism, 100%. I'm with you. I don't agree in systemic altogether. I do agree in racism. We do have it here. But the problem is we're not doing that morally just thing by encompassing everybody. I get that everyone wants to put this in. And I don't want to fight with you guys. All I'm trying to say is you're going to get more people paying attention with better terminology than you're going to get by trying to say some BS, and that's it. If you guys want to vote and put it in.
I don't want to use the term BS because as a person of color, when I think about what happened to the Hawaiian Kingdom, and this is not BS to me. And so I want to be really sensitive that a lot of these things, even though the word white supremacy culture might be triggering, the idea of dismissing that idea is very painful to me. So there are two sides, obviously, to that, and I want to be mutually respectful of each other's experiences. It's not BS to me, and I think you know that. My issue, I think, with the past few meetings where we've had this conversation, and even looking beyond that, when we've had certain council members outside of this committee that kind of just want us to wrap it up and move on, is that when we don't use the word white supremacy culture, or looking at the resistance that we've gotten by using that word, we are getting the resistance from the people who are benefiting from that culture. And I'll leave it at that.
I get what you're trying to say is, everyone has their own thoughts and what this is. Again, the terminology used is what I am having a problem with, not the sentiment of the message. I get that, and I want to respect as much as possible to do that. But again, it falls down on that term. We can come up with 50 different terms. The problem is no one wants to do that. Instead of bridging a gap or doing anything, people want to fight. And I mean, Colette already told me you, Mercedes, and her are all tired of my shit, is what she sent to me in a message. So, I mean, there's that.
Not my words.
I've never said that. I'm having I think, a pretty good dialogue with you right now.
Yeah, and I've had great dialogue. So that's why I didn't understand that, where that was coming from when she said that. So that's where it was like, it was real frustrating for me to understand that. But again, I didn't put myself in your shoes and listen to it. I'm against the word. It's very easy. I don't want to fight and argue and do that. If you guys want to take a vote on it and vote, I'm going to vote no respectfully. You guys can pass it without me.
I just want to say, when I am talking about white supremacy culture, Yeah, I am actually not talking about lynching during the gold rush or whites murdering Chinese, nor am I talking about the fact that the white people during the gold rush changed all the laws so only they could prosper from the gold. I'm talking about today. I'm talking about the grocery store. I'm talking about the school classroom. When there's a white teacher, a lovely woman, she is not a racist, and a little white boy walks into her classroom and he's cute and he's smart and he could be her son, and he's a little bit rambunctious and he's bouncing off the walls and she just thinks he's smart and charming. A little black boy walks in right behind him and she doesn't recognize herself in that little boy, and that little boy is labeled as a problem for doing the exact same thing that cute little white boy did. That, Darren, is white supremacy culture that we have to address if we care about this work at all. It's not calling people racists. It's something that everyone on this screen has been capable of, and we don't see it. And that therein lies the work, and therein lies the words that we have to craft very carefully so that people don't think we're not talking about lynchings that were done in my great-grandmother's era. We're talking about stuff that is woven into this culture every day of the year by all of us.
Nikki asked what my statement was about. That's what I was thinking about when I wrote that. The sentiment you're putting out there, I'm right on the same page with you. That is not the problem that I've been having. The problem is the terminology used. That's it. So I'd like to hear Mercedes too. I mean, she comes up with a lot of good points. She's got her hand up.
Well, but you don't call on people, Nathan, I do. Mercedes.
Nathan.
Sorry,
Nathan.
Sorry, Darren. Mercedes, please.
Oh, was Nathan raising the hand? I will go after you go, Nathan, because I already spoke.
I don't think he was. I was just looking at Nathan because I was going to see what Nathan had to say, but he didn't raise his hand.
Oh, well, now that he has unmuted himself, maybe it's his opportunity. No?
I think we're putting him on the spot.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I think I missed something here.
I didn't want to put you in this spot.
No, I was adjusting my glasses, I think, and maybe it looked like I raised my hand. I get kind of antsy sitting for too long. I apologize.
It's okay. So, so thank you so much, Colette, for that example. I think it's a really simple and very true of what happened today. And I want to say that a couple of things. One, when I think about white supremacy culture, of course that I think what happened in the past, the lynching, the Ku Klux Klan, all of it. But it's not all. We are centering not in the past, but like Colette said, in what is happening nowadays. How the culture permeates everything. You know, culture permeates ourselves, our organizations, the city administration, the county, everything. Me, you. So examining what are the ways in which we reproduce the culture is what we are interested in. Not to blame, not to punish, but to make a different society. This is a great opportunity. We are at a moment where so many changes are happening. We are seeing that. You know, the COVID has illuminated all the inequalities, and we have the great opportunity to enact change. So, and along with what you were saying, Colette, about the little kid that gets into the classroom and the teacher doesn't see herself in that little kid, so is misjudged I think in the same way about the Native Americans, you know, when a little long ago, when we started, I look at statistics, and it's horrible what happened, for example, to many Native American children, that they are sent to special education, not necessarily because they need that, but there is some bias. In the same way that, for example, Mexican kids, Mexican-looking kids are sent more often to schools that are in alignment with juvenile halls, for example. So I just think that it's so easy to see the connections between how the culture permeates everything. The people that make decisions is creating actions in alignment with the culture. So I think that if each of us can step out of our identity, we could have more freedom to see where those things connect, where the dots connect with each other. And one more thing I wanted to say is, and I guess this is for you, Darren, and maybe also, you know, like to Colette and Jim. As a white person, probably you have never faced discrimination as a Black person, as an Indigenous person, or as a woman of color face. So, you know, it is hard to put yourself in the shoes of people that face discrimination. And I really appreciate the effort that Colette and Jim are doing to put themselves in our shoes, because it's difficult to understand. It's like, I remember saying not long ago, somebody asked me what type of vacation I like. I love vacations, you know. But you know, the vacation I would like to have just one day where I don't need to think about how to be safe. One day where my race or my accent, who I am, influence others in negative ways. I would like to be seen for who I am. And you know, that is something that white people do every day. White people usually have not to think about all those things. So when you, Darren, are talking about that you disagree with some terminology, I invite you to step out of that comfort zone and to understand where other people are coming from. And I am not saying that for you to respond in this moment. It's just an invitation, like, you know, to be open, to think of the possibility that maybe is true.
I like your sentiment. I do. So let's do that. Let's get together. Show me. Teach me. Tell me. I would like to see. I'd like to understand. I'd like to do all that. I'd like to see it from your perspective. So let's do that. Hit me up in an email. Hit me up. Call me something. Pablo's got my number, I think. So you can call me. We'll meet up. We'll do that. I have no problem. Public's comment on they want in. Nathan too.
Nathan, did you? Oops.
Yeah, I just wanted to weigh on this. Sorry about last week. I did watch the video. I watched the other 3 videos as well. I don't feel like that terminology has any place in this document. I think it's troubling terminology. The more I look at the definition is so wide, it can mean basically anything. For instance, one of the videos, there was a woman describing white supremacy culture, and she said it was the ideology that white people are better than people of color. They're more deserving, able, competent, and professional. So that's her definition. I think that's probably a lot of what the public would say is the definition. But when you go out there, the definition is so wide. As I mentioned before, it's, having written documents, being objective. There was someone running for governor of California who was African-American, and he was called a white supremacist. So to me, the word, it can be used as a bludgeon to, I disagree with your politics, therefore you're a white supremacist. And when you have such a wide definition, then it means really nothing. So I just think that the term isn't particularly helpful. No one agrees. We don't even all agree on what it means here. And so I don't think it's helpful. And then even if we did agree, if we took the definition from the video that it's the ideology that white people are better than people of color, then what you're doing is you're taking one race in Tuolumne County and kind of putting the blame on them. And I don't think that's going to be helpful for bringing a community together. Because what do you do with someone like me? My parents crossed over the border from Mexico. My dad's first language was Spanish, but my mom's white, so I'm half and half. So where do I fall in this? I was accused of being a white person multiple times by the public on this forum. And then sometimes I'm excluded from the white people. So I just don't think it's helpful, and I don't think it's going to bring people together. But I do agree that if we don't put it in there, then there's going to be another group of people that are going to be upset. So it seems that we're stuck. But my official opinion and vote would be that this is not a helpful terminology.
How about if we write our definition of it? And that's part of the resolution. Well, we are specific about what we mean by white supremacy culture.
Well, if we could agree upon that, I still think then what you're doing is you're picking on a people who have a different pigmentation in their skin as opposed to someone else who has a different level of pigment in their skin. It feels like the blame is being shifted to one group of people, and I don't know if that's going to be helpful.
I guess I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure that I'm blaming anyone. It's about becoming aware of how different the experience of walking in this world is for a person with my color skin than a Black person or an Indigenous person or a person of color. How very, very different our experience is. And it doesn't mean that life isn't hard for everyone. But it's always, if you take 2 parallel lives and one has white skin and one has dark skin, the dark person's experience is more difficult.
I have no doubt about that whatsoever. I just think the terminology.
Isn't that supremacy culture right there?
No, we're not. Well, I don't think so. I think taking the word white out of this statement is a big mistake. It's white supremacy culture. I'm the one who has the advantage. I'm going to open it up to public comment because it's unclear to me if we're going for 90 minutes or just 60 minutes. We talked at the end of at the last meeting about going for 90 minutes, but Mary Rose was ill, so she wasn't part of that. So I'm going to open it up to public comment, and then we'll address how long we're going to go. Pat.
Okay. Well, I'm assuming you did not show the videos that you were talking about to us, the public, because of what Mary Rose said. I know you can't answer me. or I don't know, it's supposed to be a conversation. Anyway, I'm disappointed to not have seen the videos. It is an hour. I don't know if you're going to go for another half hour. I would request that you, if we go for another half hour, that you show them. I think they're short, probably. You said at the last meeting that you would take 10 to 15 minutes and show these videos that Lisa and Mercedes had put together or had selected. And oh gosh, I had some other things I wanted to say, but I do want to say, I feel like as a white person who has the privilege of having white skin, I'm not to blame for racism. I don't feel that I am to blame or that any white people are to blame unless they are, you know, espouse a racist ideology. But I do feel that it is my job as a white person to stand up for people of color and to be an ally to people of color, like, you know, the situation you described in the grocery store where the woman, the white woman who was half Black apparently stood up for the Black woman who was being you know, she had to show all kinds of ID and all that. Anyway, I feel like that is the responsibility of white people is to, and it's not the responsibility of people of color to educate each other.
Thanks, Pat. Sabina.
Hi. So what we're discussing right now, this is all social science, and that's a very complicated field in general because you're dealing with phenomenon that, like, we have to actually come up with the language to discuss. So from that perspective, yes, everyone's going to have a different definition. I mean, there's a joke in anthropology, which is what my degree is in, that if you ask an anthropologist, or if you ask a million anthropologists what culture is, you're going to get 2 million answers. Because it's constantly being redefined. And and the same thing is true for how we discuss white supremacy. And I think there's this misconception that white people today are being blamed for what happened in the past, whereas it's not blame, it's explanation of why systems are set up the way they are. So take Tuolumne County, for example. We had Chinese exclusion laws that prevented Chinese women from immigrating to the US. It prevented Chinese men that were here from marrying. It prevented Chinese men who were here from working certain jobs, like actually mining for gold. So that intrinsically is going to limit economic abilities and family growth and being able to have a strong foothold in a community. And then of course, Chinese camp was burned down. So you have to think about how would Tuolumne County looked had white people not come in and set up a boom culture or a boom economy that relied on taking as much gold regardless of destruction caused, be it environmental or human life. So had that not happened and the Miwok were still the predominant population here, or the Chinese had a bigger representation here, or Mexican populations and, you know, ethnic groups we're still here, Honduras. So like we have to think about it from, like, we exist in a system where white people did view themselves as supreme. So these laws, when we talk about white supremacy, is that historically white people did view themselves as supreme and put up various roadblocks, ever-changing roadblocks, to ensure that white people remain the predominant population. So, and we can see this fear creeping into public discourse, even with people like Tucker Carlson, who spreads the Great Replacement theory. Well, I hate to call it theory, Great Replacement conspiracy theory, that white people are going to be replaced by people of color. So there is this fear of white people not being the supreme power in this country. And it's not that white people, here again, it's not that white people are expressly aware of that. Some are, and some in power do shape laws to fit this narrative, but a lot of people are apathetic to it. For example, like taking the Sonora city meetings, not having a Zoom option is ableist because it prevents people who have mobility issues or whatnot, other limited abilities to participate. So their voices will no
your
longer.
3 minutes are up.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry. I'm used to seeing a clock, but it's not showing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but thank you.
No, it's all good.
Thanks. I just want to make a quick announcement. We're meeting till 5:30 today, so I am going to call on a few more people from the public to speak, and then we'll go back to the committee. Margaret Willett, you're next.
I have a couple of different things. One is, I guess if videos are going to be, if the committee are going to hear about videos, is there any way that the public can hear about the same videos to prepare in advance so that we can all then discuss it? I think discussing it without that video is kind of hampered. I've seen one of those videos apparently, and the white presenting woman in the store was related to the Black woman and could say to the clerk, why did you treat her differently? And the clerk said, because she hasn't been here as long. And that person could say, I'm the one who's been here a shorter time. I've only been here 3 months and she's been here years, and counteract that in a way that then the white person behind also could then realize what the problem was, that the problem was with the clerk. And it helps to know all the information about the video to be able to discuss it. Another completely, or maybe I'm seeing a different video than you are, but this is the video that I've seen about 2 women in a grocery store. The other thing that I would suggest is just in the things that Mercedes put at the end, that was a draft. I see aggression and I don't see microaggression, and many of the things that were mentioned in terms of white supremacy culture were actually microaggression things, and I think we need to mention that as well, because that can cause enough, that can cause the kinds of things that Mercedes runs into every day, that can cause so many of the things that we don't, as white people, don't see, and that people of color run into every day. And also just, I want to hope that when you put this whole thing together, that you include things like we're in the Fresno resolution that say specific steps that will be taken to counteract it, and not just make it words with that are just sitting out there with no means of following through.
Okay, it sounds like Margaret is finished. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so I kind of want to interject here and talk about the videos. I think it would be wise of us to agendize the links to the videos for the next meeting and talk about it then, because it's really unfair to have the committee talk about it and everyone's not sure about the video. And what happened in the interim, why it wasn't even on this one, is that Mara Rose and I had gone to a conference, the League of California Cities conference in Sacramento, and we were basically unavailable for the 3 days because we were doing the conference and all the ancillary events. And so it's well, you can shake your head, Colette, but
that's not, it's more complicated than that.
Well, I don't think so. I don't want to get into it publicly, but anyway, so I think it's better that we do this in a more, where everyone has a chance to watch the videos.
We can't, that's why only we can watch them. There's a copyright issue. That's why.
No, we can't play them, and because they play on the air and then they get on the video, and then there's a copyright issue. But if there's links, people can actually view them ahead of time. So
just a question, Jim. So those videos are publicly available in YouTube, well, at least the two that I sent. So they are, it's true that they are copyright when they are part of a curricula that is thought, it's like part of a package. But those video clips are publicly, if people just Google, they can find those videos.
But if you on some videos, if you broadcast them, then the copyright, YouTube comes up with the copyright. That's what happened with the Canadian school one we saw lots of months ago. I don't know if you recall, I think it was Reed School up in Canada.
Right.
Talking about First Nations, whatever. And YouTube put a copyright issue when we replayed the video. So there's issues with that. It's better if people have the opportunity to see them on their own screen rather than it being because these meetings are rebroadcast on YouTube, and therefore, if there's a copyright issue, it will come up. Actually, you know, I used to videotape for the Mudload Martin Luther King event, and all the speeches by Martin Luther King that were played at the very beginning came up on some of my videos at least twice as copyright protected. And so I had an issue when I put those on my own website or own YouTube channel. So so it's better if there's links for that and have people see that rather than than playing them over the air through the meeting.
I think that is a great idea. It's just about finding alternatives instead of saying we can do this. So thank you for saying that it's possible to do it in different ways. I appreciate that.
Okay, Tristan, you're up.
Sorry. White supremacy culture exists. It has manifested itself in this gathering rather directly a couple of times in several instances. It is something that needs to be addressed. I guess that's about all I have to say. I get confounded otherwise because I am confounded by the fact that I had to confront this and see it in front of my face, to see people advocating for the protection of white supremacy advocates. That just freaks me out.
Thanks, Tristan. Megan.
Thanks so much. Hi. Thank you for this conversation. And I just want to speak from the heart and really acknowledge and thank Mercedes for sharing what you did. And I really heard what you said when you said you wanted a vacation for one day from feeling unsafe. And let me know if I didn't get that right. But just having one day where you didn't have to think about your race and how you would be received by people and think about your safety. And in that context, I just would ask that the people who are speaking against using the term white supremacy, think about why. I mean, how did we get here? If not from white supremacy, what is this even about? And so, you know, who are we protecting? Whose feelings are we protecting? And how uncomfortable is it for the people here in this nation to reckon with that every day in Black and brown and disabled and queer bodies? You know, so white supremacy encompasses much more than race, by the way. I just have to iterate that you know, where do people think that racism and systems of oppression come from? What caused this nation to be colonized besides white supremacy? What caused the imperialism of the colonialists to come over here and steal land and put Native children in boarding schools and enslave African people to earn economy for them? So a few, you know, white people and people with white privilege feeling uncomfortable about the term white supremacy, that is not my concern. I'm uncomfortable. Talking about this stuff is not easy, but there's a reckoning that has to happen. And so the sooner white people can, and you know, people with privilege of any sort can get more comfortable with being uncomfortable in order to make this place a safer place to live, then we can make progress. So I would just ask that for the people who are speaking against it and the people who are on the fence about it, really ask yourself why. What is it about this term that is so upsetting to me and so contrary to what I believe in? I cannot understand why we would tippy-toe around a term that is integral to this work. Anyway, I appreciate this chance to speak, and I would just echo that, you know, there are elements of it that can be, you know, look at the video later and see it in action in this meeting. And again, I thank each committee member and each community member who has shared of their heart today.
Thanks, Megan. Okay, so I still think we can talk about white supremacy culture and not, even though the public hasn't been able to watch the videos. I think that most of the information from the videos has already come up. So, you know, there just are so many examples of this and so many examples from all of us. You know, I remember when I worked at the hospital, people would come in for surgery and, you know, their IVs would be started and we'd give them a warm blanket, and they were lovely people. And then an African-American anesthesiologist would walk in the room and everything would change. And they weren't people who considered themselves racist, but they thought they were getting a lesser anesthesiologist because of the color of his skin. And you know, that's the kind of stuff that Black, Indigenous, and people of color face all the time. And Nathan, I'm sorry, but many people do deep down inside think that there is a supremacy in whiteness. It's true, and we have to figure this out. And part of our work is to believe it, and to find it in ourselves and to recognize it in ourselves and stop it in ourselves. It's baby steps. It's not, this work is slow. It doesn't happen quickly, but you know, and I think that's where somehow, although I don't think it's the work typically of a resolution to write definitions, but we have to be very clear and define what we're talking about and know that it will take a while before it's accepted. But I mean, we can't be locked in this fear of offending, nor can we intentionally offend. But we cannot be, you know, this work, the words that we write have to mean something, and they have to be true. And when you're dealing with things like racism, and you're dealing with things like anti-LGBTQ, I mean, it's painful work. It's painful for everyone, but we owe it to the people who have been discriminated against. This is our charge, I think. So, any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I have a thought. Just to be clear, I don't have any concern whatsoever of offending anyone. I just don't think it's a term that speaks what we're trying to accomplish. The stories that I'm hearing, if an African-American anesthesiologist walks in and people are suddenly uncomfortable, that sucks. That's racism. But we have that covered here. when I look at all this stuff, that racism, hate, bigotry have no place in our community, and we're committed to speaking out against them. I mean, I think all of these stories are covered in the statements that we have so far. So I don't think that somehow deleting that term then makes any of this have no teeth. And again, if I thought it was the right thing to do and it offended everybody, then I'd say, let's do it. So I just don't have any concern about offending people. I just don't think the terminology is helpful. The terminology is fluid. And I also think that it picks one group of people out and points them out. So, yeah.
Okay. Darren.
I think that was great, Nathan, what you said. I think we're on two soapboxes, all of us. And I think on one side's, people wanting to change the actual term, not the message. And the other side is taking every inch that's possibly given. Jim came up with a supremacy culture instead of white supremacy culture, where it encompasses everybody, not a singled out version, exactly what Nathan said. But we're not giving that any credit because you're on your soapbox so hard you run back to your gang, the proverbial gang mentality where we run back to the friends that we have and the people that we socialize, where we don't sit down and have conversations to civilly disagree. And I think that's one of the problems that we are dealing with a lot, is because when we disagree, you instantly contradict him right away. Instead of accepting his message, you instantly said, Nathan, I have to disagree. And you just go out on your own rhetoric instead of understanding what he's saying in terminology and all that. And that's the kind of thing that I keep seeing, is we're running back to the gangs. I don't know Jim personally, but obviously he came up with a term that was very, very broadly used, and it was completely acceptable with what that was. But you guys just insist on putting a color. And I get that you're trying to explain it different from what you're saying, but the problem is the way it comes out is, Colette, all you want is you want to put out your, I'm not leaving the color thing out. There's no fix. You got to give and take on this somewhat. I've sat and listened. Tristan sent me videos, and or he didn't send it, give me names to watch. I watched the videos, and it's like, here's all these things that I'm doing and probably Nathan's doing, and a bunch of you probably do, but every single time that we go to have these discussions, Colette, you sit on your soapbox and you don't budge, you don't move, you're not willing.
I want to say that this is not Colette wanting to do something. I think we are in agreement about many things, and maybe we disagree in some, but I support a lot of what Colette has been doing. So I don't put it on her. I think it's a discussion we are all having together.
And I just want to make one thing kind of clear. When we were talking several meetings ago now about white supremacy and supremacy culture and all that kind of stuff, that I offered that as an alternative term because there was contention at the time to obviously contention. So I kind of wish I hadn't in a way, because we found out that there's so many definitions for so many things. And, obviously if you Google white supremacy culture, you're getting a treatise from Kenneth Jones and Tema Okun from that lists a whole bunch of different things, some of which are relevant and some are pertinent, and some of them will that probably every culture would have a problem with. So I think it's really important that whatever term we use, I like the idea of defining it, because defined as in this resolution, because otherwise you're going to get everyone, and you're going to get it anyway, but you're going to get people who will define it on their own terms. And since we're such a polarized people these days, they're going to define it on their terms and read their terms into it and either be for it or be against it. I think what we need to do is define what we're saying and go from there. For example, and I know that Darren has mentioned it in the past, one of the things that is in this article by Tema Oken is individualism, but also which has its yays and nays among whatever. But the other part was the Protestant work ethic, and so if you're getting into Protestant work ethic, then you have people of color who go to Baptists or AME or whatever that have that Protestant work ethic, and they might be offended by that. So, we have to be very careful exactly what we're, how we define it, or else it's going to be defined for us. So.
Okay. I'm sorry, Jim. Go on.
No, I was done.
Okay. So we have 5 minutes left.
Some public comments?
Yeah. So Dawn, you've had your hand up for a while. Would you like to speak? There you are.
Yeah, I wanted to speak to Nathan's comment about being the reticence to make any side feel particularly at fault or responsible or as the problem. The problem is that we have and also this idea that Darren has about the past not being connected to the future. The past is absolutely connected into the future. There's no, I don't have a today without a yesterday, and these things are layered. And the reason I get harassed here is because generations and generations and generations of people have consciously or unconsciously made this so. There's no just saying, oh, well, from this point on, nobody ever remembered that there was a thought that these people were lesser than. That's just not a reality. And so I'm getting, so to speak to Nathan's point, I get picked out as the problem every day. We've gotten picked out as the problem for hundreds of years now. And if, backing off of ever saying white is basically just saying, well, yeah, we have to still invest in white capital. It's still investing in white capital. And this idea of, well, we have to lend our privilege. This is another language thing that I hear Colette saying too, lend our privilege to them. It's also commoditizing and making this privilege a precious thing that you're spending on our behalf. Be willing to release and let go of having that privilege. Let's start actually kind of imagining a language beyond using our privilege. For me, let's say that you are where I am, and and this is a really important message from the city, because when we got racist graffiti in our driveway and people started calling downtown and we started calling downtown to find out what anybody was, we started calling the police department to step out what was going to be done. Anybody who was looking into this or reporting it as a hate crime, they said, we don't take sides on racism. That in itself is systematic racism.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks, Dawn. Tristan.
More clear can be. Sorry.
Tristan, this will be the last. We're out of time. Sabine, I'm sorry. Tristan.
I hope the public gets a chance. I hope the public gets a chance to see this whole thing. And I like that last comment, bunch of racists. Make nice viewing.
Okay, Okay, thanks, Tristan. Sabina, you can go, but you can go.
Okay, I'll just make this quick since I know we're low on time.
Thank you.
You know, in just another way of how the past does influence the future, the some of the iconic photos of Nazis burning books actually come from the burning of Magnus Hirschfeld's research into racism, into transgenderism, and this was all groundbreaking research for the 30s, and by the because of the huge loss of knowledge and the suppression of that research. And I should mention Hirschfeld in and of himself was problematic in many ways and outdated by today's standards, but for the time was very, especially in eugenics and Nazi Germany, or anti-Semitic Germany, was very groundbreaking. So that huge loss of research set, like our understanding of transgenderism, which in and of itself is a white supremacist understanding of gender, back decades, that we still are struggling to catch back up to. So yeah, that's all I just wanted to add in.
Thank you. I think we have to go to committee reports. Darren, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to say back to Dawn's comment real quick. There's a creed I used almost every day of my life. It says, the only easy day was yesterday. And I never correlated the past to the future. We live in our future because of our past. I never have said anything that the past doesn't define our future, anything like that. But I'm a very firm believer that our past has defined our future. Getting it right is right. Remember what I said, that creed, the only easy day was yesterday.
Thanks, Darren. Mercedes.
I just want to say that we are all learning together, and we have a lot to unlearn and learn. And I think that humility, being able to look at our mistakes and correct them, is part of this work. So we all are socialized. It doesn't matter in which country in this world. The supremacy culture is all over the world. Colonization happened in many places in the world. So we are unlearning every day, or we're supposed to be unlearning. And I want to say that I appreciate very much each of you for being here and for learning together. I know that we can construe something different. I know that we can build something different together. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Mercedes. Mary Rose.
Hi, everybody. This I need to do a report out on some recent legislation. This is coming from both the city administration and your city attorney's office. So on September 16th, this is for the committee members. Governor Newsom signed into law AB 361, which gives additional guidance to allow for teleconferencing in Brown Act governed meetings and committee meetings. His executive order on teleconferencing ends on September 30th. And at that point on October 1st, AB 361 becomes the law on how we go about continuing with teleconferencing. It only allows for teleconferencing in certain circumstances. Those circumstances are there has to be a declared emergency, and the governing body, the legislative body, that is the city council, has to make certain findings on imminent risk, and they have to determine whether or not the jurisdiction or additional committees meet in teleconference. On July 6th, our council determined to have meetings in person and discontinue teleconferencing, which means any meeting continuing on October 1st will need to be in person. And that means committee meetings as well. So I just wanted to give an update that after October 1st, social equity committee meetings will be in person until another vote or so forth is done by the city council. So that means our next meeting is October 11th,
and that will be in person. We will be streaming it live on our website, but we will not be having a Zoom session for the members of the public or the committee members to participate in.
Mary Rose, I just have a question about that. So does AB 361 say that you can't do, can we not do in-person meetings and Zoom? Does it forbid us from Zooming even though the committee members are all meeting in person?
It gives the jurisdiction to the legislative body itself. And the legislative body, which is the city council, voted 3-2 to not continue with Zoom.
And how does one bring that back to the legislative body?
It would take a majority of council members to ask to be put it back on the agenda.
Yeah, okay.
And I have a question, Mary Rose, about this.
Yes.
So I know that California in general has over 50% of vaccination, and the cases have diminished. I'm talking in general. That is not the case for Tuolumne County, because as we know, there is a reluctance to use face mask and to vaccinate. So I am wondering if some waiver applied this because the particular situation of Tuolumne County.
It does not. There's no waiver. So the law is quite clear on how an exemption to the Brown Act can continue at teleconferencing. And it's quite clear that states that only the legislative body, meaning the city council, has to make findings that there is imminent risk to the public health. And that's why the meeting can continue in teleconference. And we can't parcel out one meeting on Zoom and other meetings in person. It has to be all Brown Act governed meetings for the legislative body jurisdiction.
Question about that as well. When Colette and Ann were in city council, they were able to participate in video. I don't know, and I'm not trying to pigeonhole you, Mercedes, but she is older and more susceptible to a lot of problems. Would she be able to attend that meeting virtually for her, just like they did?
So when those two council members did that, that was prior to AB 361.
Gotcha.
So the law as it is written right now would not allow for that. But again, that's up again to the jurisdiction of the city council. The city council would have to make that call. The next meeting on the city council is not till October 18th.
So no matter what, next meeting has to be in person.
Yes.
On that cheery note, it's 5:36, and I think this meeting is adjourned.